Imagine breaking a bone 40,000 years ago with no hospital, no ambulance, and no painkillers anywhere in sight. You might assume that person simply died, alone and forgotten, left behind by a tribe that could not afford to slow down. But archaeologists have found something that completely destroys that assumption, and it changes how we should think about illness itself. Skeletons have been discovered showing healed fractures, healed amputations, and even evidence of survivors living for years after devastating injuries. Someone fed them, someone protected them, and someone understood enough about the body to keep them alive. Long before modern medicine, before germ theory, and before a single hospital existed, ancient humans had systems for healing that were remarkably sophisticated. By the end of this video, you will understand what those systems actually looked like, and why some of them still work today. You will also learn why researchers are now taking a second look at practices once dismissed as primitive superstition. For most of human history, getting sick did not mean visiting a doctor, because doctors as we know them simply did not exist. Instead, healing was woven into daily life, handled by specific people whose knowledge was passed down through generations by word of mouth. This is often called oral tradition, meaning knowledge that survives only through spoken stories, songs, and careful memorization rather than written records. Modern researchers studying isolated hunter-gatherer societies have found medical knowledge so precise it rivals parts of early clinical practice. Later in this video, I will explain how one forest-dwelling tribe accidentally discovered a natural antibiotic centuries before Alexander Fleming. I will also explain why ancient humans understood mental health in ways that Western medicine only began appreciating in the last century. Many people assume prehistoric life was short, brutal, and defined by constant untreated suffering with no real medical understanding at all. That assumption is only partly true, and the full picture is far more interesting than most people realize. Skeletal evidence from Shanidar Cave in modern-day Iraq shows a Neanderthal man who survived severe injuries for years before dying. His arm was withered, his hearing was damaged, and yet someone in his group kept him alive long after he stopped being useful for hunting. This suggests care and compassion existed among our ancient relatives far earlier than scientists once believed possible. Every human society throughout history developed a dedicated healer, often called a shaman, medicine man, or medicine woman depending on the culture. A shaman was not simply a spiritual figure but often served as the community's doctor, therapist, pharmacist, and surgeon combined into one role. These healers spent years, sometimes decades, memorizing which plants cured fevers, which stopped bleeding, and which eased the pain of childbirth. There's something even stranger almost nobody talks about, and it involves how these healers actually tested their remedies over generations. Knowledge was refined slowly through trial and observation, then passed down carefully so that mistakes were not repeated by the next generation. The Calauea people of the Bolivian Andes are a striking example, using a pharmacy of over 900 medicinal plants passed down for centuries. Modern pharmaceutical researchers have studied Calauea remedies and found genuine bioactive compounds inside plants their healers had used for hundreds of years. Imagine a small group gathered around a fire high in the Andes Mountains many centuries before written medicine existed anywhere nearby. An elder healer crushes bark from a specific tree, mixing it carefully with water while younger apprentices watch every single movement closely. This is not guesswork, because that same bark contains compounds still used today to treat certain infections and reduce swelling. The apprentices will carry this exact recipe forward, teaching it to their own children decades later around different fires in different valleys. But here's what most people don't realize. Ancient humans also developed remarkably advanced surgical procedures using only stone tools and careful technique. Trepanation, the practice of drilling or scraping a hole into the human skull, has been found at sites dating back over 7,000 years. Surprisingly, many trepan skulls show clear evidence of bone healing, meaning the patient survived the procedure and lived for years afterward. Researchers believe trepanation was sometimes used to relieve pressure from head injuries, and other times to treat seizures or severe headaches. This means ancient healers understood something about the skull and brain that required real anatomical knowledge, not blind superstition. Beyond surgery, ancient humans developed an extraordinary understanding of plants, testing thousands of species to separate medicine from poison. The San people of the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa still use over 200 plant species for treating various illnesses today. Their knowledge includes remedies for wounds, parasites, digestive problems, and even natural insect repellents made from crushed leaves and roots. This knowledge did not appear overnight, because it likely took thousands of years of careful observation and dangerous trial and error to develop. Now here is where the story gets even more remarkable, involving a discovery that shocked modern microbiologists studying ancient healing traditions. Researchers examining traditional wound treatments in parts of West Africa found certain plant pastes containing natural antimicrobial compounds similar to modern antibiotics. These treatments were applied directly to wounds to prevent infection, long before anyone understood that invisible microorganisms even existed. This is a perfect example of ancient humans achieving real medical results without understanding the underlying scientific explanation behind why it worked. Illness in ancient societies was rarely treated as only a physical problem, because most cultures viewed sickness as connected to mind, body, and community. Many indigenous healing traditions still practiced today treat depression, anxiety, and grief as seriously as they treat a broken bone or fever. Rites of passage, meaning structured ceremonies marking major life transitions, were often used to help people process trauma and difficult emotional experiences. A young hunter who survived a near-fatal attack might undergo a ceremony designed specifically to help him process fear and reclaim his sense of safety. This approach treated psychological wounds with the same seriousness as physical wounds, something modern psychology only fully embraced in recent decades. There's something even stranger almost nobody talks about, and it involves how communities handled contagious illness long before germ theory existed. Many hunter-gatherer groups instinctively isolated sick members, moving them to separate shelters until symptoms disappeared or the person recovered fully. This instinctive form of quarantine likely reduced the spread of disease within small, tightly connected groups living close together for survival. Anthropologists studying the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last true hunter-gatherer societies, found similar isolation practices still used today. The Hadza also rely heavily on specific plants for treating stomach illness, and modern lab testing confirms several of these plants have real medicinal properties. This tells us something important, that careful observation over countless generations can produce genuinely effective medical knowledge without any laboratory equipment at all. Childbirth was another area where ancient knowledge proved surprisingly sophisticated, with experienced midwives guiding mothers through one of life's most dangerous moments. Midwives across many ancient cultures understood positioning, breathing techniques, and herbal remedies that reduced complications during labor and delivery. Some of these techniques, like specific breathing patterns and physical positioning, are still recommended by modern midwives and doctors today. This shows a direct line of knowledge stretching from ancient birthing huts to modern delivery rooms across thousands of years of human history. But here's what most people don't realize. Diet itself was often used as medicine, carefully adjusted based on a person's specific illness or condition. Certain foods were given to reduce fever, others to stop diarrhea, and others specifically to help wounds heal faster during recovery. This early form of nutritional therapy shows an understanding that food directly affects the body's ability to fight illness and recover from injury. Modern nutritional science increasingly confirms what many ancient cultures already knew instinctively about the healing power of specific foods. Community itself functioned as medicine in ways that modern isolated living often fails to replicate for people facing illness today. In most ancient societies, a sick person was never left completely alone, because survival depended on the entire group working together. This constant social support likely reduced stress, improved recovery outcomes, and gave sick individuals a genuine reason to keep fighting for survival. Researchers today increasingly recognize that social isolation worsens illness outcomes, confirming something ancient communities understood instinctively without any formal medical training. So what does all of this actually mean for how we understand ancient human life and our own modern approach to health? Ancient humans were not primitive victims of disease with no understanding of their own bodies or the natural world around them. They were careful observers, patient experimenters, and skilled healers who developed real medical knowledge across thousands of generations of trial and experience. They understood the connection between mind and body long before modern psychology gave that connection a name. They understood the power of community, isolation, nutrition, and plant medicine, often achieving genuine results without ever knowing the scientific reasons behind them. Many of the remedies and practices developed by ancient healers are only now being validated by modern laboratory research and clinical studies. This does not mean ancient medicine was perfect, because many practices were ineffective, and life expectancy remained far shorter than it is today. But dismissing ancient medical knowledge entirely, as many people once did, ignores centuries of careful observation and genuine human ingenuity. Perhaps the real lesson here is not that ancient humans knew more than us, but that they paid closer attention to what worked. They watched, they tested, they remembered, and they passed that knowledge forward with a level of care modern society sometimes forgets to practice. The next time you take medicine for a headache or visit a doctor for an infection, remember that this story began around ancient fires. It began with healers crushing bark, midwives guiding mothers through labor, and communities refusing to abandon their sick and injured members. If this look into ancient human survival and forgotten wisdom fascinated you, consider subscribing for more videos exploring how our ancestors truly lived. Leave a comment sharing which ancient healing practice surprised you the most, because your perspective adds real value to this growing community. And if you want to understand more forgotten knowledge from human history, make sure to like this video and share it with someone curious. There is so much more ancient wisdom waiting to be uncovered, and the next story might completely change how you see the modern world.